Welcome to Bits and Pieces Quilting. Today we are going to make a great scrappy scrap buster quilt, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Michelle, and so many of you leave comments for me about how much you love scrap quilts and are looking for ways to use your scraps. So I have designed this pattern, which is a super simple pattern, but it's all about color and color placement. I'm calling it the four, what am I calling it? I'm calling it the four color Scrappy Plaid. It's probably more of an argyle, but we're going to go with four color Scrappy Plaid. And I hope you'll join me in making it. It's really simple. Dig through your scraps. You can also just pick four colors and use yardage for sure. But I really encourage you to dig into your scraps and see what you can make with the color families that you choose for this project. For me, I'm going to go with two blues, a green, and a yellow, but this would look so cute in reds and purples and pinks, or pinks and oranges and yellows, or really any kind of combination. You want two colors that are kind of darker, and for me, that's the dark blue and the green, and then two colors that are lighter, and for me, that's the light blue and the yellow, and then a background color. And at some point, I keep mentioning that we're going to do this. At some point, I'm going to really put some emphasis on backgrounds that aren't white, but today's not that day. So let's dive into this project. I wanted to use as many scraps as possible for this project. So I went to my cupboard and I pulled out my bin of 2-inch scraps. This is where I store the 2-inch scraps. I have a bin exactly like this for the 1.5-inch scraps. And then I have these smaller size bins. They're half size. These are my 1-inch pieces. And then I have a bin of random sized pieces. And then I have a bin that's this size, so double, for my 2.5-inch scraps. And I guess I use them up fast enough that I don't need any more than that to store. And those are the sizes I save. I used to save 3.5 a long time ago, but I was finding I wasn't using them and that didn't really work for me. So those 3.5-inch pieces got cut into 2-inch pieces and 1.5-inch pieces. And this is how I sort my scraps. So I went through this, and from here, I've pulled out all of these pieces for as a starting point for this project. So I want a dark blue, a light blue, a green, yellow, and then my background, which is going to be various shades of white. So I've pulled all these out. I've also pulled all these little pieces out because they've got some pieces here that I'm actually just going to take the time and seam rip these pieces so that I can claim these pieces that match my color scheme. So I will take a moment and rip those apart. I still have a little bit, I'm going to need way more fabric than this, like way more. And it's going to be interesting because I had originally thought that I wanted this super pale yellow for my yellows, something in kind of a light, like a green, kind of like this for my green, something very pale for my blue, and then something darker for the dark blue. This is sort of the colorway I was thinking about. But as I pulled all these scraps, I can see that I've got way bright, much brighter yellow. So I think it really makes sense to go with this darker sort of feel to things. Some of these light ones then might not make the cut. The light blue, I think this is probably going to be a darker blue. I think my light blue is going to sort of stay in this sort of color family. And then the greens are kind of all over the map. I may not use these really dark. I don't want them to read as kind of black in the quilt. So I may end up more with sort of a medium green, light blue, medium blue. I've got a couple of really dark navies. I'm not sure if those will make it in the end. And then these much brighter yellows than I expected. So I'm going to go through the collection now as well and find other pieces that I can integrate into this to get a really nice scrappy look for the project. I've been through all the bins and all the drawers and all the cupboards, and this is the fabric pull. And it's not much different from what I just showed you, with a few adjustments. So my light blues are here. I found a few pieces and bits and bobs in the drawers. So those are going to be my light blues. My greens haven't changed much. I've just found a whole bunch more. The dark blues, I think I'm going to have to be careful, and I still haven't decided about the really dark navies, but there's loads here, and I think it's going to be a really nice mix. The yellows have proven to be interesting. I originally thought I wanted to use these bright, 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 almost orangey yellows that I found in my 2-inch bin. But the more I dug through the rest of the collection, the more I realized that this was more the yellows that I had enough of, and I think these just stand out too much. So unfortunately, they're going to go back into the 2-inch drawer and I'm not going to use them. But there are still some scraps and some little bits and pieces in here as well that I'm going to cut up and use. Some leftover pieces of some fat quarters. There is some yardage here, but then there's just also some bigger pieces. So those will be really good to use up. I found a few pieces in the blues that I think I've put them over here into the reject pile because I think they're all just a little too medium, if that makes any sense. And that's all these pieces. Things are a little bit too teal, too much onto the teal side. This kind of blue, which I really like, but it's definitely not light, but I think it's maybe not dark enough to be dark. I think it's just too medium. Same with this one. Too dark to be in the light side, probably too light to be on the dark side, so it's very much a medium. And then this one as well with the yellow in it. I do love it, but I couldn't easily put it in one pile or the other, so I think that that means it just has to be out. So that's my decision making, and yes, I've confirmed that these dark greens, this green, well, maybe he'll go back in there. He just seemed really muddy to me, so he may not make it either. And then some of these really, really dark blues that'll probably read closer to black. So these are the reject piles. They're going to go back into the scrap bin. So with the fabric pull sorted out, this is a really simple project. We're just making this 9-patch block with the printed colored fabrics down this diagonal and with the background in the other position. So it's a lot of background, but my background's scrappy. I'm going to use all these different whites, but all these bits and pieces of the whites in the collection. Now you can make this as a legitimate 9-patch block with 9 patches, or if you want, you can substitute these ones and these ones for a brick that's 2 inches by 3.5 inches, like this. So whenever I do a scrap project like this, I want to make sure I use up the smallest pieces first. So all of these whites are just 2-inch squares. They probably were just a tiny bit bigger than 2 by 3.5. These ones are 2 by 3.5. And then I think I've cut up all the little pieces. So I will cut 2 by 3.5 inch pieces out of this until it gets small enough, and then if there's just a 2-inch piece left, then that's what will happen. So I'm going to use a mix. Some of my blocks will have two pieces here, and some will just have the brick. Once I've used up all the small little pieces, then I'll start looking at strip sets to make my blocks. So for the project, you need 48 of each of them. 48 dark blue, light blue, 48 yellow, 48 green, 48 of them. 2 of them, in this case, I need to double check. I think it's let me double check. Just double check the pattern. 2 of them, the dark blue and the yellow, will get made like this. And the green and the light blue, they will get made like this. All right, it's the same, you can turn it, but I'm going to work out a pressing strategy so that all the blocks interlink together when I go to sew the blocks together. So what I suspect that I will do is make all of the dark blue and yellow like this, press all the seams in one direction and then to the left or to the right, and then press these seams either up or down. And then I'll do the opposite with the light blue and the green so that the seams all nest. I'm going to test this as I go, and so stay tuned through the video as I update you along the way to make sure you press your seams the right way. So like I said, I'm going to start to sift through all the little pieces first, trim down. See, this piece is just a little bit bigger than 2 inches, so trim all of these down. So I start with the smallest ones first, and then I'll go into making strip sets until I have 48 of each of these blocks. It's a lot of sewing, a little bit of cutting, but scrap usage requires sometimes a little bit more patience because you do need to cut down these pieces so they fit. It's going to be fun. It's a Saturday afternoon, and I can't think of anything better than spending it at my sewing machine. It has taken a little minute, but my blocks are all finished. I have 48 of each of the colorways. These have not used nearly as many scraps as I thought that they would, but I have still made them, and you made them scrappy, still used lots of scraps, so that's great. They have used, as you can imagine, a lot of background fabric. And I've made that scrappy as well because you know how sometimes you have just a few inches of a piece of white fabric left, for example? I've used up all of that. I've gone through the scrap bin and I've gone through my drawer of neutrals, and I've got all kinds of different white and white leaning backgrounds in here and made those all really scrappy. There are some instances where I was able to use the 2-inch pieces and made them separate. And then when I ran out of those, I actually just cut 3.5-inch pieces to make these bricks, top and bottom. That sped things up a little bit, not that it's about speed, but it was a lot more efficient than sewing all these extra seams. So they look really good. Now, can you see there's two different, these blocks go this way and these blocks go this way. Of course, I can just turn these like this, but I'm hoping that I have organized my pressing strategy properly so that all the seams are going to nest when these get put together. So in this case, the dark blue and the yellow, the top seams head to the left. On these ones, they head to the right. And then, of course, these are reversible in terms of pressing the seams up versus pressing the seams down. So I think I've got it right. I'm going to find out in a minute or two if I have or not, because now I'm going to start with the layout. The layout is really simple, and the diagram will be in the quilt pattern that I'm going to put on my website, and so you can go and download that. But if I start with just a little section, let me just show you how it's going to start to come together. So we're going to start with a dark blue, and then we're going to go to a light blue, then the yellow, then the green, kind of all the way down the row for, and I've got it planned for 12 blocks across by 16 blocks down. And then the next row we'll do just one after the other, really. Do blue. I'm going to take a minute and make sure that I don't have too many of the same designs intersecting with each other. But the rows are just going to start to form like this, and you start to get the greens slanted this way with the light blues, the dark blues and the yellows slanted this way, all across the quilt. I think they're going to look really great. I've got a lot of blocks here to sew together, but I think it'll go fairly smoothly and fairly quickly because I can lay out each row according to the pattern, take it over to the machine, and just build the quilt out from there. I have the first 4 rows laid out here across my table, across my cutting table. They just fit, they're just sort of clinging to the edge over there. And these 4 rows are now repeated 4 times across the quilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lay 3 more blocks on top of each of these piles. So I will have all my rows all laid out, and then I can just pick up each row or each group of 4 rows and sew them together. Instead of trying to lay it all out on the floor, it's meant to be scrappy. So as long as the ones that come together here aren't matching or don't clash in some horrible way, I'm happy with the mix just landing where it lands. So with 4 of them laid out up here on my table, I'm just gonna, like I said, stack them up, and I'll have each of my different 4 sections of the quilt all set to sew together. So here's the final quilt, the 4-color plaid. I'm thrilled with it. I think it looks really, really pretty. There's a lot of pieces in this quilt, a lot of background fabric, but if I step a little bit closer, you'll see that all of those background fabrics are all mixed up. There's all kinds of different ones in here. But because they're all white or really close to white, it all just sort of blends together. A nice mix of scrap across the whole quilt. Still a cohesive set of colors though, and I really like that dark border around the edge just to bring it all together. We are standing down here in the kitchen because I needed a space big enough to show you the quilt. Normally I'd go outside, but we're in the middle of a heck of a lot of snow. So going outside is just not going to happen. So we've got Jason up on a ladder here in the kitchen to hold up the quilt to show you the final project. Don't forget that you can go to my website to download the pattern. I think it looks awesome. Thank you so much for watching this video on the 4-color Scrappy Plaid. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you gave it a try. I'm thrilled with the results. I think it looks really great. It is a lot of background fabric, but I hope it also makes a dent in your scrap bin. Thanks very much for watching, and don't forget to make the most of your fabric bits and pieces.